What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my one hot gaming take. That said, right at the beginning of the video, it's just an opinion about a video game. It's not that serious, so remember that as we dive into this. That said, I myself am a pretty mellow guy, and generally speaking, as someone who plays and reviews a lot of games, I'm bound to express an opinion or two that doesn't line up with everyone else's, and usually when that happens, I just kind of go, whatever, and move on. And while this particular take also isn't something I'm particularly inclined to argue with anyone about, it is nonetheless probably the one take that I have, if you will, that never fails to rile someone up. And that is, to put it pretty bluntly, I think Dragon Age Origins is overrated. Now, in fairness to everyone, I did not play it when it released. I played it a little under a year ago, and while I do think it is a very good game, at the same time, believe it is very much so overrated. So to give everyone a little bit of context, I play and review a ton of CRPGs, and a lot of people consider Dragon Age Origins a CRPG, so naturally it was one of those games people wanted me to jump into, especially after I did a very thorough run of Dragon Age Inquisition and reviewed that. I mentioned that I'd never actually played Origins, but I had really enjoyed the Dragon Age setting. From that, people really wanted me to check out Origins, so I did. And ultimately, my conclusion was that it's a good game, but I think people find themselves attached to their nostalgia more so than the actual quality of the game. Which is fine if that's how you feel about it. I understand that playing something, especially in your formative years, if that was for you, or the fact that Dragon Age Origins was one of the few prominent CRPGs released from about 2002 to like 2013 or so. So a lot of people remember it for that, and they're very attached to it as a game. And again, I do think it's a good title, but nonetheless, overrated. I personally really love the lore of the Dragon Age setting. It's something that I've talked about prior to this. However, beyond the lore and the setting, Dragon Age Origins as a game is very clunky and more reminiscent of the later entries than people like to admit to themselves. Because if you actually sit down and look at Dragon Age Origins right next to Dragon Age Inquisition, they're both guilty of a lot of the same stuff. But my personal favorite is the fact that they actually both have a lot of pointless filler quests. And admittedly, Inquisition has much more of them, but Dragon Age Origins also has a lot of quests that lead nowhere, that don't really add anything to the experience. And truth be told, there's things I enjoy more about Origins and things I enjoy more about Inquisition. And honestly, there's things I enjoy more about Dragon Age 2 that I think it does better than the other two games. So when it comes to Origins in particular, I think people remember it for the time it released in, what BioWare was doing as a company at the time, and honestly, their distaste for the departure from that format that the series took in its later entries, and as such, they tend to put Origins on a bit of a pedestal that I personally just don't grant it. Because while I do love the lore and the setting, like I mentioned, I think it stumbles in some pretty critical areas, and those being the fact that combat's clunky, certain abilities are bugged to this day, so it makes that a little difficult to navigate in general, but combat could certainly be improved. But you know what? It's an older game, so I'd be willing to forgive it if it was just that. But then you combine it with the little filler quests, especially with those mission boards you'll find everywhere. And then you look at some of the writing around characters like Loghain, and while I admit there's some subjectivity to Loghain as a character, like regardless of my personal feelings about Loghain, some people believe he's a good guy, some people don't agree with what he did at Ostagar, fine, whatever. I actually like that they managed to work in some subjectivity there. However, a lot of the motivations that could potentially be used as a reasoning for Loghain pulling his bad guy move, if you will, are very difficult to find in-game. You can find some references to them, but you don't really get much of a chance to have them explored and explained. In fact, a lot of that gets relegated to out-of-game material, which in my opinion is just poor writing. And given the fact that that's a pretty plot-critical moment, their failure to explain it in a satisfactory manner to me is jarring, even given how good the rest of the game is. And that point in particular sometimes feels like they wanted to give it that subjectivity, but ultimately decided to just paint him as a easy-to-hate bad guy in the game itself, which I find disappointing because if you actually dig into Loghain's background and read all of this out-of-game material about him, it does paint a very compelling case to justify his actions. But then, we don't see any of that in-game, which kind of sucks. But all of that said, For those reasons, I don't think that Dragon Age Origins is quite as good as people make it out to be, even if I do think it is a good game. But there you go, everyone, my one hot gaming take, and that is that Dragon Age Origins is overrated. But all of that said, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, like it. If you disliked it, dislike it. I get paid for that too. So thank you either way. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.